The night sky broke apart with a flash of fire. A bright object shot across the stars like a falling star, but it wasn't a star, it was something else. Something big, burning and heading toward the forest near the hills. Ray was outside, chopping firewood. When he saw it, his hands froze, his eyes wide. It wasn't every day that something from the sky crashed near his home. He dropped the axe, grabbed his flashlight, and ran toward the forest. The trees were tall and silent. Only the soft sound of wind moved through the leaves, but deeper in, the smell of smoke filled the air, and soon he found broken branches and strange black marks on the ground. Ray followed the trail, heart beating fast. He didn't know if it was dangerous, but he had to see it. Then he saw it, a twisted piece of metal half buried in the dirt. It didn't look like any plane or machine he had ever seen, but that wasn't the strangest thing. He heard a sound soft like crying. It came from the bushes nearby. He walked slowly toward it, light shaking in his hand. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was a small animal. She had fluffy fur, big shiny eyes, and tiny paws. Her body was curled up and shaking. Ray knelt down and whispered, "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The little creature looked at him with scared eyes. She didn't growl or run. Instead, she let out a weak sound, something between a cry and a whisper. She looked hurt. Her leg seemed twisted. Ray gently reached out, and to his surprise, she didn't pull away. He wrapped her in his jacket, carefully holding her close. She was warm. But something about her felt strange. Not bad strange, but different. Her fur glowed slightly under the moonlight, and her eyes, they weren't like normal animal eyes. They looked deep, almost too smart, too human. Ray walked back home with her in his arms. She didn't make a sound the whole way. He laid her on an old blanket near the fire and gave her water. She sniffed it, then slowly drank. Poor thing. Ray said, sitting beside her, "Where did you come from?" She just stared at him, not blinking, like she understood every word. That night, Ray stayed near her. He couldn't sleep, not after what he saw. He kept thinking about the crash, the strange metal, and this little creature. Something wasn't right, but he didn't feel afraid. In the middle of the night, he woke up to a sound, a soft hum, like a low vibration. He looked over and saw the creature glowing faintly in her sleep. Her body shimmered, and her shape only straightened slightly, only for a second. Then it stopped. Ray sat there, frozen. "What are you?" he whispered, voice low, but she didn't wake up. The next morning, Ray made her a little meal, boiled eggs and bread. To his shock, she picked up the bread with her paws and took a bite. She even licked the plate clean. Ray laughed and said, "You're smarter than you look." As the days passed, she healed fast, too fast actually. Every night she glowed a little more, and her eyes followed Ray wherever he went. One day he found her trying to open the door. She stood on two legs for just a second. Ray saw it through the window and dropped the cup in his hand. She quickly dropped back down and crawled away. "What the hell?" he muttered. Animals didn't do that. Not like that. He was starting to wonder, was she really just an animal? Or something else entirely? He started calling her Nala. She seemed to like the name. Sometimes she even responded with a small chirp or blink. She was acting more like a child than a pet. One evening, Ray was drawing in a notebook. He stepped away for a minute. When he returned, he saw Nala holding the pencil in her paws. She had drawn a crooked line, almost like she was trying to copy him. Ray whispered, "You're not just some animal, are you?" Nala stared back, completely still. Then slowly, she tapped her paw on the paper 3 times, then paused. Then one more tap. Ray didn't know what it meant, but something deep inside told him this little creature was much more than she appeared. and whatever she truly was. Others might be looking for her too, outside the house, far beyond the hills. Something big moved through the trees. A shadow taller than a man, holding a strange, glowing device. It beeped once, quietly, and pointed straight toward Ray's home, Ray. Didn't know when it started, but something about Nala had changed. She no longer acted like a scared little animal, hiding in corners or shaking when thunder rolled through the night sky. Now she watched him. Her big, glowing eyes followed his every move, blinking slow, as if she were thinking, studying, remembering everything he did. Ray sat at the small wooden table, eating dinner quietly. He could feel her stare, calm but intense. From her soft bed near the fireplace, he glanced at her, expecting her to turn away like animals usually did. But Nala didn't move. Instead, she slowly tilted her head. Ray smiled awkwardly. "What? You hungry again?" he asked with a chuckle. Nala stood, walked on all fours to the table, and sat beside him. She didn't whine, didn't bark, didn't growl. She simply placed her paw on the table edge and waited. Ray tore off a piece of bread and held it out to her. To his surprise, she didn't eat it from his hand like usual. She took it gently, moved back to the corner, and stared at it for a few seconds. Then, with care, she tried to hold it between her paws like hands. She struggled at first, dropped it once, but tried again. By the third try, she held it steady and took a small bite. Chewing like a human, Ray sat frozen in place, lips parted, watching every second. He leaned forward and whispered, "You're learning, aren't you?" Nala looked at him and blinked once, slow and calm, like she understood. The next day, Ray placed his old radio on the table and turned it on. The static buzzed for a second. Then music started playing, soft and slow. He wanted to test something. Nala turned her head toward the sound right away. Ray moved the volume dial up and down. Nala's ears twitched each time the sound changed. Then she stood, walked closer, and looked at the radio like she was curious. Ray sat on the floor, watching. "Do you like it?" he asked, tapping the radio twice. Nala sat and looked at him. Then she lifted her paw and tapped the wooden floor twice. Ray's heart skipped. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing her tiny claws tap the floor softly as she walked around. He got up for water and saw her near the window. She stood still, staring at the stars. The moonlight touched her fur and made her glow faintly again. Ray whispered, "What are you, really?" Nala turned around slowly. Her body stood straighter than usual. She was on her back legs now, but not shaking like before. She stood like a small person only for a few seconds before she dropped back down and crawled away. Ray dropped the cup. In his hand, glass shattering on the floor. He didn't even look down at it. The next morning, he decided to draw what he saw in his notebook. He sketched Nala, standing upright, glowing softly, her big eyes filled with some deep emotion he couldn't name. He left the notebook on the table and went outside to get firewood. When he returned, Nala was on the chair, holding a pencil in her paws. She pressed it to the paper again and again, making short lines beside his drawing. Ray stepped forward, slowly, not wanting to scare her. She looked at him, then at the drawing, then back at him. Her paw tapped the sketch once on his figure, once on hers. She was trying to say something, but before Ray could speak, a loud sound filled the air. A sharp whine, distant but powerful, like something tearing through the sky. Nala jumped from the chair and ran under the table. Ray rushed outside and looked toward the forest. Above the trees, something floated. Silent and smooth, a black ship, round like a disc, hovered in the sky with blinking red lights. Ray froze. It was scanning the forest with beams of white light. It didn't stay long. It rose higher, turned, and flew west without a sound. But Ray knew what it was. It was looking for something or someone. He ran back inside and looked at Nala, hiding. Under the table, shaking again, Ray dropped to his knees, whispering, "Is it them? Are they looking for you?" Nala didn't answer, but her body glowed softly again, her eyes filled with fear. That night, Ray stayed by her side, a shotgun in his hand and 100 questions in his mind. He had rescued what he thought was a cute, helpless creature, but now he was sure of only one thing: whatever Nala was, she wasn't from Earth, and he had a feeling that whoever came looking for her wouldn't care that he'd grown to care about her. They'd take her no matter what, unless he stopped them, and for that he needed to know the truth. The birds stopped singing that morning. The forest, always alive with sound, had fallen silent. Ray felt it before he saw anything, a deep pressure in the air, like something heavy had entered the world. He stepped outside with a mug of hot tea, and the silence hit him like a wall. The wind didn't blow, the trees didn't move, even the bugs had gone quiet. Then he heard the hum, not loud, but low and sharp. Like a blade slicing through the sky, Ray raised his eyes and froze. 3 black dots moved above the trees, circling slowly like vultures. Not birds, not drones, but ships, alien ships. They made no sound now, but the feeling in Ray's chest said they were searching for something they lost. He ran back inside and locked the door. Though he knew it wouldn't help Nala, he whispered, "We have a problem." She was sitting near the fire, calm to calm. She looked up at him and tilted her head slightly. Ray pointed toward the sky. "There. Back, aren't they?" Nala didn't move, but her fur rippled like waves in water. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, and the color in them wasn't fear anymore, it was anger. Ray dropped to his knees in front of her. "Please, I need to know the truth." For a second, it felt like time stopped. Then Nala raised her paw and placed it on his chest, gently, and in that moment, Ray saw something. Not with his eyes, but with his mind. He saw a world not like Earth, tall towers of glass, skies filled with flying lights, and people with glowing skin. He saw Nala, not as an animal, but as a girl, walking proudly among her kind. Then fire, chaos, pain. She was captured, cursed into a beast form, and thrown out like garbage into deep space. Ray gasped and pulled back, his heart racing. You're not just an alien," he said slowly. "You're royalty." Nala didn't deny it. Instead, she stood on 2 legs again. Wobbling but stronger than before, she tried to speak, her mouth shaping silent words. But no sound came. Ray whispered, "We'll figure it out, I swear." Just then, a loud mechanical click echoed outside. Ray jumped to the window, peeking through the curtains, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 3 tall figures, dressed in black armored suits, walked through the trees. Each carried long glowing weapons and scanners in their hands. Their faces were hidden behind sharp metal masks. One of them held a screen, and on that screen, Nala's picture flickered, half creature, half girl. They were tracking her. Ray backed away from the window and turned to Nala. "They've found you." Nala's ears dropped flat, her body trembling for the first time in days. Ray grabbed his backpack, stuffing it with food, water, his notebook, and a flashlight. Then he turned to Nala. "We have to go." Now, he opened the back door slowly and led her into the woods behind the house. The path was narrow and filled with roots, but they moved fast. Ray knew these woods better than anyone. He had hidden in them as a child, played in them as a teen, and walked them for peace as an adult. Now he was using them to escape. Behind them, a loud screech echoed through the forest. One of the hunters had triggered a scanner alarm. They were closing in. Ray and Nala reached an old hunting cabin deep in the forest, barely held together, They ducked inside and caught their breath. Ray peeked through a crack in the wooden wall and saw movement shadows passing between the trees. "There? Tracking energy," he said. "It's your glow, isn't it?" Nala nodded. Slowly, she reached for the dirt floor and began drawing with her claw. A circle, then symbols, then a small star. Ray recognized one symbol. It was the same she drew. In his notebook, "What does it mean?" he asked. Nala pointed to the star, then to herself, then to Ray. He understood. It meant she trusted him, and he realized something. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was a mission. She wasn't just running from enemies. She was running towards something: freedom, hope, maybe even revenge. Outside, the shadows stopped moving. A strange voice echoed through the forest. Deep and metallic, "Return the subject, and you will not be harmed." Ray looked at Nala, who now stood beside him like a guardian. "No," Ray whispered, holding her hand. "You're not their subject anymore." He pulled out his old hunting rifle, barely used but still functional. If they were going to take her, they'd have to go through him first. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have guessed, was that Nala didn't need saving anymore. She was about to show him who she really was. And the hunters from the stars were about to learn what happens when you corner something that was never meant to be caged. Asterisk. It started with her voice, not a full word, not even a sound, just a soft vibration in the air, like a whisper that hadn't learned how to speak yet. Ray woke up in the middle of the night, heart racing, unsure why. The wind outside was howling, branches scraping the sides of the old hunting cabin like claws. But that wasn't what pulled him from sleep. It was a feeling, a strange tug in his chest, like someone was calling to him. Without words, he looked over, and Nala wasn't on her blanket. The fire had died to glowing coals, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Ray grabbed the flashlight and swept it across the room, and then he saw her. She was standing by the window, not on all fours, but upright, her back to him, tall and still, like a statue. Her glowing fur had faded, replaced by smooth skin with lines of soft light running along her arms and legs. Her hair, long and white, moved with the air as if it had a life of its own. "Nala?" Ray whispered, afraid his voice would break whatever magic was happening. She turned around slowly, her eyes shining like twin moons, and then she did something that froze Ray in place. She smiled. It wasn't a human smile. Not exactly, but it was warm and full of emotion. Ray stepped forward, not sure if he was dreaming. You changed again," he said softly. Nala blinked slowly, then pointed at her throat and shook her head. She still couldn't speak, not yet. But her body had changed more in one night than in all the days before. Ray couldn't believe what he was seeing. Gone was the small, animal-like creature he'd rescued. In her place stood someone else, still Nala, but now more girl than beast, more alien than ever before, and yet somehow more familiar too. Ray sat down on the floor, eyes wide. "You're remembering who you are, aren't you?" Nala nodded. Slowly, she walked over to the small notebook he always carried and picked up the pencil. Her fingers were clumsy, unused to human tools, but she managed to write 3 letters. AROY. Ray's breath caught in his chest. "You remember my name?" he whispered. She nodded again, smiling. Before he could say more, they heard a noise outside, low, steady, and too smooth to be natural. Ray rushed to the window and saw them. The hunters had returned, this time with a different machine, a ground tracker. Digging into the soil and scanning for life forms, he turned back to Nala. "They're not giving up." Nala's face turned serious, her eyes glowing brighter. She placed her hands on the wooden wall and closed her eyes. The entire cabin shook softly, just once, like it had taken a breath. Ray felt something in the air change, like electricity was crawling across the walls. Then he saw the marks appear, glowing lines forming symbols above the door. "What is that?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Nala pointed at the symbols, then at herself, and then at Ray. She was protecting them, but Ray could see how much it cost. Her hands were shaking. Her knees weak, she wasn't fully transformed yet, and using her powers this way drained her. He helped her sit down, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You don't have to do this alone," he said firmly. "I'm here." Nala reached up and touched his cheek, a soft, glowing hand against his skin. And then, just for a moment, he saw flash memories not his own. A dark ship, a glowing throne. Nala, as a girl with many voices calling her name, she had been someone important. A leader, maybe even a princess. She had fallen from the stars, not by accident, but because someone wanted her gone. Ray blinked as the vision faded, breath trembling. "Why? Would anyone want to hurt you?" he asked. Nala looked away, her eyes filled with sadness. Before either of them could speak, the device outside let out a loud beep. They had been found. Ray grabbed the rifle, checked the bullets, and moved to the window. The glowing lines on the door pulsed like a heartbeat. The first hunter stepped into view. His weapon ready, scanning the cabin, Ray's fingers tightened on the trigger. But Nala stood up behind him and placed a hand on his shoulder. He turned to look at her and for the first time, she opened her mouth and let out a sound. Not a scream, not a word, but a wave. A deep, humming tone that shook the glass and made the hunter stumble back. It came from her chest, from her very being. She wasn't fully human, wasn't fully alien animal either. She was becoming something. In between, and Ray, standing beside her, knew in that moment that the girl he'd saved was never just a creature in need. She was power, hidden in a small form, and now that power was waking up, and nothing, not even the stars, could stop it. The forest caught fire behind them, but it wasn't flames that burned, it was light. Strange silver light that cracked through the trees like lightning made of glass. Ray ran, his breath heavy, his boots crashing through roots and leaves. In his arms Nala clung tightly, her glowing hands wrapped around his neck. She was weak, barely awake, but her skin still flickered with sparks of alien energy. Behind them, the sound of metal footsteps grew louder. The hunters had found them again, this time with faster machines and louder threats. Ray didn't know where he was running anymore, only that he had to keep going. He leaped over a fallen log, nearly slipping, but kept moving. The edge of the mountain was close, and just beyond that an old mine. He remembered it from his childhood, forgotten by most, hidden deep beneath the cliffs. They reached the rocky edge, and Ray kicked open the rusted gate. He ducked into the darkness, breathing hard, and gently laid Nala on a pile of dry cloth. She looked up at him, eyes dim but full of trust. "We're safe for now," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if it was true. She reached for his hand and squeezed it, her glowing fingers cold and trembling. "You used your power, Ray. Said, to protect me, to stop them." Nala nodded slowly, then closed her eyes, her breath shallow. Ray looked around the dark mine, old beams creaking, dust dancing in the faint beam from his flashlight. He knew they couldn't stay here long, but for now, it was the best hiding place they had. Ray sat beside her, and for the first time, she began to move her lips again, not just humming, not just sounds this time. She was trying to speak. Her voice was low, broken, but soft like music through broken glass. "Ray," she whispered. "I remember." He leaned closer, shocked. "You do? Remember what?" "I see." Opened her eyes and stared into the dark, like watching a movie, only she could see. "I was part of the circle," she said. "Guardians of light." Ray had no idea what that meant, but he stayed silent, listening. "They used me," she continued. "Made me small, made me quiet, made me forget." Tears rolled down her glowing cheeks. Not water, but tiny sparks of light. Ray reached out and wiped one away, and his hand tingled like touching starlight. "Why would they do that to you?" he asked, voice shaking. "Because I said no," she whispered. "No to war, no to slavery, no to war. No to them." She looked at him, and for the first time he saw the warrior in her eyes. The quiet creature he had saved from the forest was never meant to be helpless. She was born strong, but punished for her kindness. "They crashed my ship," she said, "erased my mind, turned me into a pet." Ray clenched his fists, furious. "That's what they wanted make you, a silent thing. Easy to control." Nala sat up slowly, her body flickering like a candle trying not to die. "They underestimated humans," she said with a small smile. "They didn't think one would care." Ray felt a lump in his throat. "I didn't save you just because I felt sorry," he said. "I stayed because I saw something real in you." Nala reached for his face and pressed her forehead gently to his. Energy passed between them like a breath of stars. Suddenly, images flooded Ray's mind, flying cities, battles in space, her standing on a platform, speaking to thousands, and then chains, shadows, silence. He gasped, pulling back. "You were a leader." "I was," she said, "but now I am just me." Ray shook his head. "No, now you're more." Before Nala could reply, a loud metallic bang echoed down the mine tunnel. They had been tracked again. Ray stood, rifle in hand, ready to fight. Nala tried to rise, but her knees buckled. "You're not strong enough yet," he whispered. "Just stay behind me." "No," she said, and her voice now carried a deeper tone, full of something old and powerful. She reached forward and placed her palm on the mine floor. A symbol of light burst outward in a circle, covering the entire room in faint blue glow. "What's that?" Ray asked. "Memory anchor," she said. "It will show them what I really am." Footsteps approached, metal boots echoing louder and louder. 3 hunters entered, weapons raised, glowing red eyes locked on Nala. They didn't hesitate, didn't speak, just fired. But the moment the blasts hit the light symbol, they stopped, frozen midair like caught in ice. One by one, the hunters were pushed back, their bodies shaking, sparks flying from their suits. Then their helmets cracked, and the energy holding them exploded in a quiet flash. When the light faded, only dust remained. Ray turned to Nala, stunned. "You didn't just fight them," he said. "You erased them." Nala lowered her hand. Breath shaky. "I remembered," she said. "And they remembered fear." Asterisk. The ground didn't shake when she rose, but the air forgot how to breathe. Ray didn't understand it right away, but the silence told him something had changed. He watched as Nala stood in the glowing circle she had drawn. Her body no longer flickered between forms. Her shape was clear now, tall, radiant, and terrifyingly beautiful. Gone were the paws and fur, replaced by smooth silver skin marked with glowing blue lines. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now narrowed, like a blade ready to strike. The mind seemed too small for her now, too fragile. Like the world itself couldn't hold her much longer. Ray took a step back, not from fear, but awe. "Nala," he whispered, barely able to speak, "is this really you?" She turned her head slowly, her voice calm, but deeper than before. "Yes, it's me," she said. "All of me." Ray had no words, only questions. But one question pushed to the front of his mind. "Why now?" he asked. "Why did your power come back today?" Nala looked at him with eyes full of something ancient. "Because you saw me when I was nothing," she said, "and you still chose to stay." The light around her pulsed like a heartbeat, glowing brighter with every word. "Your kindness unlocked the chains they put in my mind," she continued. You reminded me that I was never a thing, never a pet, never forgotten. Ray looked at her, heart pounding. He had saved what he thought was a helpless creature, but now she stood before him like a goddess born from the stars outside the mine. Thunder cracked not from a storm, but from machines landing nearby. The last hunter ship had arrived. Heavier, louder, and full of soldiers, Nala turned toward the tunnel entrance. Her face cold and focused. "They're here," she said. "The final ones." Ray grabbed his rifle. "Then we fight together." She looked at him and placed a hand on his chest, her voice soft again. "No, Ray. This part is mine." Before he could argue, the mine wall exploded, and light poured in like a river. Metal shapes stepped through the smoke, their weapons glowing, armor thick and humming with energy. There were more than before 10 soldiers, tall and silent, marching forward with perfect control. The leader raised a strange device, his voice flat and without feeling. "Subject L14," he said. "You are ordered to surrender and return for reprogramming." Nala didn't move. Ray raised his gun, but Nala gently pushed it down. "She's not yours anymore," Ray growled. The soldiers raised their weapons, red dots locking on Nala's chest. "I was never yours," she said calmly. "You only borrowed my silence." Then, with a motion like water folding on itself, she disappeared, not vanished, not gone, just moved, faster than eyes could follow. One moment she stood still, the next she was in the center of the soldiers. Her hand raised, and the ground shattered beneath them. Blue light surged out from her body, slamming into the walls, breaking rock, bending steel. The soldiers fired, but the energy curled around her like a living shield. She spun, kicked, and the air cracked with every move. Ray watched as one by one the soldiers fell, not dead, but frozen, suspended midair by strange light cocoons. The leader tried to run, shouting into his device, but Nala appeared in front of him. She didn't strike him, didn't burn him. She only looked into his eyes and whispered one word: "Remember?" The device in his hand sparked, his mask cracked, and he collapsed, shaking. The cocooned soldiers faded, turned into particles of light, and vanished like dust in morning sun. When it was over, the mine was half destroyed, the rocks glowing. With alien energy, Nala stood in the middle, untouched, her breathing slow but steady. Ray stepped forward, heart pounding. "Nala," he said, "you didn't kill them." "No," she replied. "That's not who I am." Ray looked around at the damage. Then, "What happens now?" She turned to him, eyes filled with sadness and strength. "I need to leave," she said. "There are others like me. Lost, broken, hidden across the galaxy." Ray felt a crack inside his chest, like something slipping out of reach. "So, this is goodbye?" he asked. She stepped closer, placing her hand on his cheek. "No," she whispered. "This is a beginning." She leaned in, her forehead against his, and for a moment they both saw stars. She showed him a path through galaxies, through time, through pain and hope, and in that silent vision, Ray understood her mission. She wasn't just a girl or a warrior. She was a flame lit by kindness, now burning to free the forgotten, and Ray was the match that started it. The stars answered first, long before Nala spoke, before she made her choice, before the ship arrived. The stars had already begun to move. Ray stood on the cliff's edge, staring into the night sky as strange constellations shifted overhead. He didn't know why, but he could feel it in his chest. Like gravity was pulling his heart apart. Something was coming, something final, behind him. Nala stepped out of the shadows, silent as always, but no longer hiding who she was. She wore the old armor of her kind, sleek, glowing, and regal, yet cracked in places like it had survived fire and storm. The light from her skin pulsed gently with every breath, a rhythm that matched Ray's without either of them realizing. She walked to his side, eyes on the stars. They answered. She said softly, "My people heard me." Ray nodded slowly, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. "They're coming to take you home," he asked, not needing the answer. Nala didn't speak. But the sorrow in her glowing eyes said everything. Far above, a tear opened in the sky, silent and beautiful. A silver gate unraveling space itself. From it, a ship descended, more alive than mechanical, shaped like a winged moon and covered in flowing lights. Ray had never seen anything like it. Not even in dreams, the ship hovered above them. No sound, just presence. Then a voice spoke, not from the ship, not from a speaker, but from the air itself. Noli 1:4. "Your call has been accepted," the voice said. "The stars welcome their daughter home." Ray turned to her, his voice low, shaking. "You're really leaving?" Nala looked at him, her hands trembling slightly. "I have to," she whispered. "There are so many more like me." Still trapped, still silenced, Ray took a step closer. "I understand," he said. But his heart didn't. She reached out and held his hand, her touch still glowing, still warm. "You were the first to see me," she said, "not as a creature, not as a thing, but as someone." Ray smiled, bitter and proud all at once. "And I'd do it again," he whispered, "even if I had to let you go." The ship lowered a ramp of light, a staircase of energy forming in the air. It waited patiently, like it had all the time in the world. But Nala didn't move. She looked up, then back at Ray. She seemed to freeze, caught between galaxies and one simple human life. Then her body glowed brighter, her chest, her hands, her face, like all of her was unlocking. The sky above them shimmered, and images flickered in the air. People, creatures, planets, all of them chained or caged. Calling out, Ray saw them too, their cries forming waves of light, all flowing toward Nala. "They need you," he said gently. "I get it." She looked into his eyes and whispered, "But I need you too." For a moment, everything paused. Even the stars seemed to stop moving, waiting for her answer. And then she stepped forward, not toward the ship, but toward Ray. "I won't leave you behind," she said, "not forever." She raised her hands and drew a circle of light between them. In the air, a symbol appeared, simple, glowing, and ancient. "This will connect us," she said, "across time, across space, even if we're not together." She pressed the light into his chest, and it sank gently into his skin, warm and quiet. Ray felt a part of her inside him. Now not just memory, but something living. "Will I see you again?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. She stepped back slowly, her eyes full of love and sorrow. "When the stars call again," she said, "I'll come." And with that, she turned, walked up the staircase of light, and entered the ship. Ray watched as the ship rose, not fast, not slow, just steady, like it knew it carried more than one life. It drifted upward, glowing softly, till it passed through the silver tier in the sky and disappeared. The night was quiet again, but Ray didn't feel alone. He looked at the spot where she had touched his chest, and the symbol glowed faintly. He smiled through tears, whispering, "Goodbye, Nala," above him. A single star pulsed brighter than all the rest, and in that glow he felt her smile one last time.